Well, hello there, friends, and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Syracuse Sports. My name is Brent Axe. It is amazing to have you on board, ladies and gentlemen, no matter how you're taking in the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, it is all greatly appreciated. A special welcome to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. And if you're not an insider, why not? Just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. And what will happen is something magical and amazing. It's Christmas miracle. What will happen is I will text you and you will text me. You can text me anytime about anything, as often as you'd like during games. If you have questions for me, things you want me to seek out, story ideas for Uncle Brent, always appreciate that. Tips for Uncle Brent, always appreciate that. We have had an amazing back and forth with our Syracuse Sports Insiders the past couple of weeks. They received the news first that I broke that Syracuse was finalizing a deal for Fran Brown to become the next head coach at Syracuse. Tidbits, inside information, stuff from the locker room, which you'll get after Syracuse basketball games as we're going head of steam into basketball season here for the Orange. Being an insider has its advantages, friends. So sign up today. Just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. It's a 2-week free trial and then just $3.99 a month. After that, we're going to hear from our insiders here shortly in this opening segment, and a question that I had for them and just some things that have been on their mind this week with Fran Brown taking over and all the Syracuse football news floating out there. Speaking of Syracuse football, we're going to hear from Steve Wiltfong coming up soon. He is the director of recruiting for 24/7 Sports, and it has been a whirlwind since Fran Brown took over. There's been a number of 4-star recruits, big names, some committed elsewhere, that are now going to visit Syracuse this weekend. So we're going to get Steve's thoughts on that. And certainly he was not surprised to hear Fran Brown in line for a head coaching job. And when his name popped up, he was very familiar with Fran, as 247 Sports recently rated him the top recruiter in the country. So we didn't get a ton of time with Steve, unfortunately. He's a very busy guy these days with signing day just a couple weeks away and the portal opening up. But even just 10 minutes with Steve was fantastic, and I think you'll enjoy that. But speaking of our insiders, I wanted to start with this. So I asked you guys a question on the Syracuse Sports Insider line, and that question was this. With Fran Brown's press conference yesterday, did that cause you to take action? Did that cause you to donate to Orange United? Did that cause you to want to get season tickets again? Did that cause you to commit financially again to Syracuse in just a day? Shout out to Matt, who's one of our Syracuse Sports Insiders. He texted me this morning. We're talking on Tuesday here, December the 5th. And he said, Brent, me and a bunch of my coworkers, we were so fired up by Fran Brown's introductory press conference. And Matt Park, shout out to Matt, who did a great interview with Coach Brown. Boom, we're in. I've heard from so many of you that have not only said, man, I will run through a wall for this guy, but I want to get involved. I want to help. I want to back this guy to make Syracuse football what it should be. Right? Make Syracuse football great again initially. So I said to the text line, who actually, like yesterday, just based on what they heard from Fran Brown, so Monday the 4th, his opening press conference said, I'm in. So I wanted to highlight some of those texts, and I got a bunch from you guys here, and you're going to see your names pop up on the screen here shortly. So there was that, and then I just wanted to highlight a few things from the insiders as well that have been on your mind. Now, guys, I don't always have time to do this, right? Sometimes we just got to read your texts, and for those that are just listening on Spotify or Apple or just taking in the experience through their ears, I'm going to do story time and read it to you anyway. But for those of you watching on YouTube, look at this, little added bonus for you. Victor sent us a text at 315-847-3895. It's, Brent, I enjoyed your article on football and the emphasis on embracing former players. I never realized how enormous the disconnect was with former players. That's really unfortunate. Football's definitely hitting, or Fran Brown, I should say, is definitely hitting all the right notes. Your one-word description of him, authentic, is perfect. He strikes me as an honorable man with great character and someone who walks his walk. I'm still pinching myself in disbelief. So if you didn't see that, I wrote a column on syracuse.com that addressed the lack of involvement between the previous administration under Dino Babers and football alumni. Some very honest voices there from the likes of Quadria Smile, the likes of Damian Rhodes, the likes of Robert Drummond, who I talked to, Bruce Williams, former Syracuse receiver, is now the head coach locally here at Syracuse at CBA. And they had some very striking, honest comments there. And it's almost as if Fran Brown did an exorcism on that in one day, opening up his arms, his world, his team for alums to be back. He wants them around. He said at his press conference, I don't want your money, I want your presence. And by being involved and being part of it, the donations will come and getting involved again will come. That was very striking. I appreciate you reading that column as well, Victor. Tom here says, Brent, Fran Brown's amazing and has taken the highest possible road of re-energizing a great many of the players that made Syracuse football a great program. How did so many prior head coaches miss this? This is a small sample, but big obvious step. I am psyched for things to come. Brilliant observation by Coach Brown, and he did what another may not have even thought of. High compliment to Coach Brown for being observant, listening, and acting quickly to draw all SU fans back in. Wow. Scott chimes in here and says, honestly, I have no clue an overhaul of this magnitude was going to happen for both major sports. Got to give the AD, John Wildhack, credit. Change has been needed. David says, Brent, I increased my Orange United membership from $50 to $100 as a direct result of Fran Brown's interview with Matt Park and his introductory press conference. Mike V saying two things. I know you know this better than I do, but your column points out a huge problem under Babers. Secondly, the two basketball games this week are must-wins, and neither is cupcake. Syracuse has to stay on the right side of that line that gets drawn with bad losses, mixing in some hoops with the football talk. More from you guys on if you took direct action as a result of Fran Brown's press conference. This is from Chris, who says, I just emailed for bowl tickets. I'm becoming a season ticket holder for the first time, and I live in Florida. This text here from Brian. I live in Connecticut, so getting to Syracuse these days is tough, but after watching Coach Fran Brown's press conference, it made me want to run through a wall for this guy. While I cannot buy season tickets, I certainly will plan on getting up to the Dome for at least a game next fall, as well as going to West Point to see Syracuse play Army. And he adds, go Orange. A few more from you guys here off the text line at 315-847-3895. This is from Kevin, who says, yep, signed up for Orange United after I saw Matt Park's interview with Coach Brown this week. Roger saying, I donated as a direct result to Fran's presser. Will saying, I personally haven't donated directly to NIL. I'm a season ticket holder whose tickets went up $200 last year. It was stated the donation to Syracuse was the reason for the price hike, and that's about $500 for Section 126. And keep in mind that they are going to reformat the seating at the JMA Wireless Dome after lacrosse season. There's going to be less capacity in the Dome, around 44,000 people. And think of the demand that's probably going to uptick for tickets, particularly if Fran Brown keeps up this success, if he could get some big-time recruits to commit, because that's why they brought him in, right? Well, let's talk to a recruiting expert about that. Who's coming in, Fran Brown's success, why he got this job, and why you can recruit anywhere if you do it right. Steve Wiltfong is the director of recruiting for 247 Sports, and he joins us here on Syracuse Sports. Let's take a listen. So, Steve, if Syracuse fans heard the name Fran Brown 2 weeks ago, they'd probably have to Google him. But when Fran Brown popped up as the Syracuse coach, I bet you that's a name that you knew. Just tell me how you're taking all this in, and Fran taking over the job, and certainly his recruiting prowess is kind of what plowed the road to get him here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about who are the absolute best recruiters in America, and there are a lot of guys that do a great job on the trail year in and year out of pounding the pavement, building great relationships, evaluating film at a high level, working their sources, logging the miles, making the extra conversations. Nobody is better than Fran Brown. Maybe there's a couple in his arena, but he's one of the all-time great recruiters. You talk about that one Baylor recruiting class that helped turn that program around under Matt Rule and company. He basically recruited. He was as responsible for almost everyone in the class as anyone. He cross-position recruits. He cross-country recruits. He just has a knack for being able to relate with anyone and everyone. He's clear and concise with his message. He's super personable. And on top of that, he cares about people. He wants what's best for them. He wants to see them thrive and shine, and they feel that when they talk to them. And recruiting is going to be a big part of his role at Syracuse. He's going to lead from the front. He's going to be very involved in that component. He's very eloquent in his vision. He's very passionate about what he can do at a place like Syracuse. And I think it's an exciting hire. I think that when you look at some of the people that he's already hired, Elijah Robinson, 24/7 Sports National Recruiter of the Year, Fran Brown, #1 in our recruiting standings. They just brought in Nick Williams, who is one of the top recruiters in the country. These are guys that are relationship builders. They are relentless. And more than anything, particularly when you look at the background of Fran Brown and Elijah Robinson, they've been at places where it wasn't just recruiting 5-stars. And people are like, oh, it's so easy to recruit with a Georgia logo on your vest. Well, you're recruiting against a guy that's wearing an Alabama logo on his vest.
Right.
Logo on his vest. So, but Fran Brown is recruited at Temple. He helped build them into a championship conference, a conference champion. He was at Baylor and helped them get to a New Year's Six bowl game. And Elijah Robinson, much of the same. These guys can evaluate talent, and then they have proven track records of developing their position rooms over the course of their career. And I just know Fran Brown's very excited to be at Syracuse. And I'm super excited to see what he's able to do because he is one of the absolute best recruiters that I've been around. And it's because he's a great guy. He's a good football coach, and he cares about people, and the people that come and play for him, he gets the best out of them typically because they feel that, and he's also a good football coach.
Steve, it feels like that Fran is really going to dispel the notion, and we'll see if it proves out here. But Syracuse, as you know, it's a tough place to recruit. There's a lot of narratives about Syracuse weather and certain things that have worked against it, the performance on the field in recent years. But Fran seems to bring to the table that none of that matters. It is the guy. It's the coach, not the school. I know we have that like chicken and egg debate all the time here. So is he out to prove, and do you think he can prove that it is the guy and it's not the school, although you do need a little bit of both?
Well, I think it's a great school, a great institution that offers a lot. And then you got a guy there in Fran Brown who's going to be electric in voicing what Syracuse football and what Syracuse the school can do for a blue chip prospect. But I'll say, as my phone's going crazy over here, as we're a little over 2 weeks away till the early signing period. And Syracuse, they're hitting the ground running. They're going to have visitors this weekend. I'm not expecting Syracuse to have a top 5 or top 10 recruiting class, but what I kind of like think it could be under Coach Fran Brown is that I do think that they'll win some top end talent each cycle, guys that like a lot of schools will be in on, the Penn States of the world, to just kind of go regionally. But I think when you look at kind of like how Mark D'Antonio built Michigan State into a team that won 11 games or more 5 years in a row, they did it with the recipe of they won some big recruiting battles regionally over Michigan and some other high-end foes. But what they really did was they evaluated at a high level, and then they won those recruiting battles over places like Pitt, NC State, North, because you still got to recruit your ass off to get those kids. Those other schools are recruiting too. So the guys at Syracuse is going to project as, hey, maybe this guy doesn't have an offer from Clemson, or he doesn't have an offer from Florida State, but he has the upside physically and athletically to help us beat Florida State and to beat Clemson. But to get this kid to come to us, he also happens to have, an offer from Rutgers, and he has an offer from Pitt, and he has an offer from Michigan State, and we got to beat those programs to get that guy here. And I think that Syracuse is going to win a lot more of those battles. And then it's up to great strength and conditioning, great coaching, great scheming, great player development. But that's how I kind of envision what Syracuse recruiting is going to be, where I think recently, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, the guys Syracuse has been winning on not a whole lot of Power 5 action outside of the Qs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this is a staff that when they identify what's in their range, and that will certainly be some of the best in New Jersey and places where they definitely have inroads. But I think I liken it to, if you can find that magic that like Mark D'Antonio and his great staff had of, getting guys like Denard, beating Pitt for him, that's a under the radar recruiting win for an eventual first rounder, and so that's the recipe.
Steve, I know you got to run. Busy times going here. Your phone's blowing up, the portal, and recruiting is coming down the pike here. Before I do let you go, one last thing. We could go over a lot of names here, but you mentioned there's some guys coming in on visits this weekend that weren't coming in on visits until Fran Brown took over. So I just want to throw a couple names at you here, and you can add in any that you would like to. King Joseph Edwards, 4-star defensive end that Syracuse fans are really excited to see is in the mix. Coy Beasley, a 4-star cornerback who's coming in this weekend. Jalen Hornsby, a 4-star wide receiver as well. There's a few names there, and you throw any others at me that are coming in that Syracuse fans should know about.
And not throwing names, but these guys are going to be active in the portal. And I bet you they'll be active with guys that they built great rapport with, when they were in high school. And so it'll be a seamless transition when Fran Brown, Elijah Robinson, Nick Williams, and company start talking to these guys about Syracuse. There'll be a foundation there because they did such a good job of recruiting those guys when they were in high school. But Jalen Hornsby stands out. He's committed to Texas A&M. But the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball, including my forecast and colleague Brian Dones, we're on Syracuse. We like where the Q stands there. King Joseph Edwards, my crystal ball is on Syracuse there. Nick Williams was the lead recruiter for him at Colorado. Fran Brown has a relationship with him because the kid's out of Houston, Georgia, Mill Creek High, powerhouse program. So he's already got a relationship with the family. So those are lining up. As long as King Joseph has a good visit and they like being around him in that environment, I think that's setting up nicely. And anytime Fran Brown has a defensive back on campus, they're going to have a great chance. His reputation of developing that position and recruiting that position again is second to none. I'm just happy for him, man. He's always envisioned himself as a head football coach, and here he is getting that opportunity. He's worked his entire life. He's thought about this moment for many, many years, and he obviously, as you guys saw in his introductory press conference, he hit the ground running. That was super authentic, and that is his number one trait. He's a very authentic guy, very authentic coach. Players love playing for him. And again, he's going to get out there and recruit. He's going to build connections with all the important people around a prospect. He's going to hire a staff that does the same. And he's proven that he can evaluate talent. You just look at the programs that he helped develop from Temple to Baylor to Georgia, and also did some time under Coach Schiano at Rutgers. He's been a lot of places that have helped put him in position to be a terrific head football coach at Syracuse.
It's going to be fascinating to see, Steve. Signing day is approaching rapidly. You know that better than anybody, and the portal opening up and the Fran Brown era at Syracuse. Appreciate your insight today. We'll definitely have to catch up down the road, and really appreciate the work that you do, my friend.
Yeah, Brent, I have a feeling I'm going to be writing more about Syracuse in the future than I have been in the past. That's no disrespect, but the higher caliber the prospects, the more I hover.
Hey guys, thanks again for checking out this episode of Syracuse Sports. Become a Syracuse Sports Insider today. Thanks to Steve for joining us, by the way, and that terrific insight on recruiting Fran Brown and Syracuse going into the future. We're going to have Steve hanging around a lot more, I sense, with the early success that Fran Brown is finding on the recruiting trail. We still got 2 weeks to signing day here, friends. A lot can happen between now and then, for sure. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders are going to get all the tidbits, all the juicy stuff, all the behind-the-scenes things. They shared some great stuff with us today on taking action with Fran Brown taking over, story ideas, tips, my opinions first. You get it all on the Syracuse Sports Insider line. Just text the word orange to 315-847-3895. It is a 2-week free trial and then just $3.99 a month. After that, Appreciate our Syracuse Sports Insiders and looking forward to many more conversations with you. A reminder about our Syracuse basketball post-game shows. We do them live after every Syracuse basketball game. If you can't be there live on YouTube, on Twitter, or on Facebook, where it streams live, if you will, then don't worry. It's right here on the podcast feed on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Either the next day or later that day if it's an earlier game. So we're looking forward to continuing that here. Cornell on Tuesday night, Georgetown. Ooh. It's 2:45 p.m. at Georgetown. Yeah, you got it, kid. So our post-game shows will continue and everything else happening in the crazy world of Syracuse sports. We got a guest coming up next week who I'm excited to talk to. And I will phrase it this way. He is a national broadcaster. Okay, a little tease for a guest I know is in the pipeline for next week. A national broadcaster that I think you'll enjoy hearing from. But I've been enjoying hearing from our Syracuse Sports Insiders and you guys about all the craziness going on in Syracuse right now. And we'll be all over it for you here on Syracuse Sports. Thanks for checking out the show as always, guys, and we will talk to you next time. And it's all been presented by our friends at Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare provider of SU Athletics.